Good evening, everyone. So I'm going to take this time to do something I haven't done in a while, and that's kind of evaluate the stance of Vladimir Putin. Now, it has always been assumed that Vladimir Putin operates the Kremlin in a never back down mindset. That's how he's always operated. The US doesn't agree with him on something, well, he just waits for a new administration or waits for the American public or a European public that largely doesn't care about foreign policy in places like Syria and Lebanon and South Africa, places where Putin tries to flex his influence. They'll forget, the West will forget, and Putin will get what he wants. Well, I'm starting to wonder if, when it comes to Ukraine, another story may be emerging, and other experts are starting to question this as well, is Putin may not truly know what is going on in Ukraine. He may not know the depth of just how badly the Russian military is being routed there, because he's being lied to. And I think Putin has set up his administration that way. Putin is most definitely a shoot the messenger type of leader, so no one wants to give it to him straight, and that's abundantly clear. That always has been clear. In fact, Chechen leader Kadyrov suggested that Putin might not be aware of the mistakes that had been made and would have to call the president himself to discuss the situation. However, Dmitry Peskov, which is the press secretary for the Kremlin, insisted Putin has been fully briefed. I mean, this is a prime example. Russian forces were fleeing in disarray from the Kharkiv region, dressing as civilians, stealing bicycles and cars, abandoning tons of military equipment and ammunition. And Putin was opening a giant Ferris wheel in Moscow, saying, "There's nothing like that here in Europe." He boasted about this Ferris wheel while his troops in Ukraine were getting absolutely smoked. He did it via video link, but still, that's what his focus for the weekend was. Although within a few hours, the Ferris wheel broke down and tickets had to be refunded. That's about the most Russian thing I've heard this week. Now, Ukraine's counteroffensive was underway even as Putin was sitting at a conference at a Far East conference, insisting that Russia had lost nothing and will lose nothing, as if it was absolute truth. Despite obvious setbacks, he was almost oblivious to what the reality was, so much to the extent that foreign leaders looked confused because they actually knew what was going on. I mean, Putin's spokesman Dmitry Peskov said that the war will continue until the goals that have been set are achieved. Well, what are those goals at this point? Because Putin's initial goal of capturing Kyiv and toppling the Ukrainian government and killing President Zelensky have failed, period. End of story. Now many Western intelligences and military analysts are arguing that Russia is unlikely to achieve its fallback goals, which is conquering Donetsk and Luhansk in eastern Ukraine. Definitely not going to conquer Luhansk. They did Donetsk, but they're going to start losing ground in that region as well. So Putin will want to declare victory in some fashion, but he can't without himself being lied to or him lying to others. I don't know how this gets reconciled within the Kremlin, or how this gets reconciled with his staff that is lying to him and what the reality on the ground is. Either way, he's left with three options. He can do a mobilization, which is politically risky and not going to happen if he believes that whatever the West is saying is false. I mean, the problem he has, though, is if he does know the truth, a mobilization may not sit well. He's already has 20 state deputies in Russia, in places like St. Petersburg, openly calling for his resignation. His political foes are becoming more vocal and gaining more influence as the country struggles with some of the highest inflation in the world. The sanctions are causing their electronic and mechanical infrastructure to degrade. I mean, see the Ferris wheel. This is happening despite the Kremlin's crackdown on dissent about this war. So that's likely not going to happen. It might, but there's also number two, which is even more unlikely to happen, which is he uses nuclear or chemical weapons. And like I say many times, I still don't believe this is a thing that's going to happen. And if he's being lied to, it's completely unnecessary. It will cause immediate rebuke from those that vaguely support him, such as China and India, but also using nuclear weapons runs against his narrative of this is fine, everything's fine, we are good, nothing's going on. Using nuclear weapons as rumors of massive losses of your army definitively does not signal everything is good to go. That's not even the worst part of that, though, for him. I mean, even the most naive and ardent Putin supporters, especially those in his arm of the propaganda, would likely disagree with the use of nuclear weapons. And finally, he would run the risk of a very, very angry and multiple order of magnitude more powerful West inflicting both great physical and great economic pain on Russia. Such an event would actually set Russia back probably a century. Now, there's a third option, which is he maintains the status quo. He refuses to back down because no one wants to tell him the truth, and he has never believed the Western media reports anyways. That's something he's always said openly. He doesn't believe the West. He doesn't believe what the West is saying. So he is lied to and continues to lie himself, and you say the lie enough, you begin to believe it for as long as he can, while throwing what he considers the insignificant rural poor population of Russia or mercenaries or other countries' men at the problem, like Syria. Now, his megalomaniac tendencies mean we can't truly rule out weapons of mass destruction, but I suspect that it'll likely be number 3, where he just continues to grind on, getting people killed, with maybe a quiet, limited number 1, which means that maybe a small mobilization that is in secret. Now, he personally has the will and is still quite popular in Russia. But one thing you can say about Russia is they certainly have the ability to endure immense hardship when one charismatic leader says they're going in the right direction. Sound familiar, Germany? So, make no mistake, in order for Putin to win, he needs a mobilization, period. And even then, Russia doesn't have the logistics apparatus to support a mobilization. Sure, get the men to the front line, but they have enough trouble supplying the people they have there already. The Ukrainian General Staff reports that Russian military command has suspended sending new, already formed units to Ukraine due to recent Russian losses and widespread distrust of the Russian military command. Factors which have caused a large number of volunteers to categorically refuse to participate in combat, period. Neither side is willing to discuss peace talks because Russia, 1, is stupid and Ukraine has the momentum. It may be able to take back Crimea eventually. If Ukraine gets Kherson back, that's the bridge to Crimea easily. Crimea is a target for sure if that happens. And Russia loses everything it had in Ukraine going back to 2014. Ukraine's military is growing in size. Its troops on the front lines are growing. It has financiers and intelligence officers and quartermasters from a dozen nations that are more powerful than Russia helping them. And now Ukraine tastes blood in the water. And with the West behind them, they probably are going to at least win back what Russia has taken recently. Putin's problem is thousands of these people and soldiers retreating from Kharkiv and Kherson and Crimea are fleeing to Russia, and they talk. So how long will Putin's popularity continue? I mean, when enough families and loved ones had loved ones die, when does that tip the balance of opinion? I mean, America lost a little over 7,000 troops in 20 years in 2 countries, Afghanistan and Iraq. Russia's lost something like 51,000 in 7 months. Also, remember, Russia has half the population of the U.S., less than half, in fact. So those numbers cut deeper for Russia. When will the truth being told by these fleeing Russians be believed over the Russian propaganda, even within Putin's inner circle, or even Putin himself? Even Russia's NATO is crumbling as the Collective Security Treaty Organization held an emergency meeting after the US-backed Azerbaijan launched a large-scale attack against Armenia. Without Russia, the CSTO's paper tiger, their Article 5, which is really their Article 4 of their collective security agreement, isn't worth the paper it's written on now, and the whole organization knows it, which means Russia's military position in places like Armenia and Georgia and Syria and others are at risk. So Putin's military is failing, Putin's international influence is crumbling, even among his allies, and he is starting to even receive internal dissent within Russia. And he's visiting a Ferris wheel. He doesn't know what's going on, I don't think. Yet again, I don't think he will use nuclear weapons, but there was ever a situation where a leader was facing down a multifaceted demise. This is it. The question is, does he even know his demise may be imminent, or do the lies just keep flowing to him? He wanted to grow Russia to its former glory. Instead, we're looking at possibly 1991 all over again. When he inevitably finds out the truth, and he will, it could be a very, very ugly time in Russia. But who knows when that will be.